Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack III.
Hello everyone, it's great to be back with you. My name is Mack III, and this is On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights. We have an action-packed show for you today. We have a lot on the agenda. Today at about 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, we're going to be joined by Allison Bricker. She's the station manager for LibertyTalk.fm. In addition to that, at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I know I'm flipping around here, I believe that's 6:15 Pacific Standard Time. And I deal with two different coasts here, so I'm trying to be fair and mention all the timelines here. But at anyway, like I said, 9:15 Eastern Standard Time, we're going to be joined by Tyler Truitt, I believe is how you say his last name. He is in the middle of a legal battle right now with the local government. He's going to tell us his story. Essentially, what it boils down to is they're trying to tell him how he's going to use his property that he owns. And they're trying to basically condemn his dwelling and things along those lines. I'm going to let him tell the story because I'm sure I'm going to slaughter it. But anyway, I'm really looking forward to today's show. It's going to be pretty awesome. First things first, let me go ahead and just say today's July 12th, 2015. Our show is titled Whitewashing History, Property Rights. This is episode 78 of our program, On the Move Show. And I'm really, really excited about today. First things first, for those of you out there, if you haven't done so already, I would greatly appreciate it. I would be much obliged if you would follow us on Spreaker. That's Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. I would really appreciate it if you go right there, Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow, and follow us there. In addition to that, I just want to give you guys a heads up. We have a lot of things happening on our YouTube channel this week and in the coming weeks here. We are putting out more videos here from the trial, my open carry trial, where I was unlawfully arrested in Washington State, Vancouver specifically. And anyway, I just wanted to give you guys a heads up. We're putting the actual trial on there right now. I'm putting the main points, highlighting the main points of the trial. Basically, I've put everything up to the actual, I don't really know what it's called. It's not really pre-trial, but it's basically where they argue different points that are allowed to be in the trial and different points that are going to be excluded from it. Basically, it narrows and focuses what the trial will be about. They also are in the process in these videos that I've released so far of basically talking about jury instructions and things along those lines. So right now we're actually about to start releasing the actual trial footage as far as witness testimonies and things along those lines. So stay tuned. We're going to be putting that information out. And for any of you who are following my case, just to give you a heads up, we will be hearing some news here. I'm hoping in the next few weeks on the status of my appeal. And stay tuned for that. We're going to be releasing an update video on our YouTube channel, and I'm probably going to break the news here on the show when I find out. So I want the Mack Pack to be the first ones to hear it. So, with that said, just stay tuned. I don't know how long this process takes because, as you all know, we've been fighting this since 2013. I believe I was arrested on June 29th, 2013. This is slow, tedious. And there's a saying about our justice system, the punishment is the process. They do this kind of stuff to basically make an example out of you, to put a hurt to you, and not only that, but just make you have to pay money, spend time every time that you have to go into court over these kind of things, even if you're completely innocent, even if you're found innocent at the end of it, you have to go into court. That costs time, obviously, out of your day, but in addition, it's not like they have, Saturday trials and stuff like that for you. They're pulling you out of your work, and you're spending your time that you would be earning a paycheck coming in to fight these kind of unjust charges. So, it's just one of those things that, the punishment is actually the process. It's really unfortunate. And, I'm not going to get into the weeds too far about our legal system, but, I do have some major issues with it. I just wanted to shout out real quick, though, as well here to the 405media.com and Haywire Gulch. Thanks so much for having us on your networks, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you guys out there haven't checked them out, please do so. That's the 405media.com and Haywire rewiregulch.com. Okay, so let's move into our featured topics today. Today we got a lot on the menu we're going to be covering in our Mack Attack segment. First things first, I want to talk about the progressives who are trying right now to whitewash our history, to, quote, improve our history by completely erasing the Confederate flag and all traces of the Civil War. I think this is a dangerous path that we're headed on when we try to actually erase and forget our history. I think that's a dangerous path. I'm going to talk about it in the Mack Attack. In addition, I want to cover property rights, particularly relating to how you use your property. We're probably going to cover this when Tyler is on the show at 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, we were talking in our Facebook group. That's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. We were talking about a group of veterans who stopped protesters from burning an American flag. Look, I've been talking about burning American flags here on the show for the past, I don't know how long. You know, this is not something that I'm even really interested in talking about anymore. I feel like I've just been beating this dead horse. It's not something that I'm a fan of, but it's something that I think needs to be discussed. So I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on this incident, and I'm going to read your guys' comments on the post that were in the group. And if you guys have anything else to add to it, feel free to add to it in our group. That's facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. One of our last topics here that are featured is I want to talk about these 24, now it's more than 24 Democrats that are pushing to eliminate the terms husband and wife from federal law. They're now basically saying that we need to use the terms spouse and spouse, so we are not discriminating against homosexual, same-sex marriages, that kind of situation. So I'll give you guys my take on that. I have a bunch of other news topics that I want to get to. Lots of stuff going on in the news. There's no way that we're going to be able to get to it all, but I'm already feeling like we're going to go into an overdrive right now. So unless I can't speak by the end of this show, it is very likely that we're going to be doing an overdrive. As usual, you all are welcome to join today's conversation. You can do so in a number of ways. First, you can call us 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@onthemoveshow.com. You can get us on facebook.com/onthemoveshow. And you can get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. Anything you'd like to discuss is on the table. Please give us a call. Light up those Mack Pack phone lines. Again, one last time, that number is 360-450-5625. And lastly, don't forget to check us out our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Whew, that's a mouthful. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the next segment of the show. We like to call this the Weekly Defender, and this is my favorite segment of the show.
And now it's time for the Weekly Defender.
You have the right to defend your life, the right to defend your family, and the right to defend your freedom.
This is a segment of the show where we report about armed citizens in the news who have used their firearms to defend their family, their property, or themselves in some way or another. So our first Weekly Defender we found on bearingarms.com. And I just want to give a shout-out to our Mack Pack audience. These are all linked from you, so thanks so much for providing us with these stories. That's really awesome. This story is titled, AK-47 Saves Lives. Las Vegas man uses iconic rifle to successfully defend family during home invasion. This is posted by Bob Owens on July 2nd, 2015. And the story says, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police were called to the scene of a home invasion Tuesday morning, only to discover that a 23-year-old resident armed with a semi-automatic AKM, I'm assuming that's a version of an AK-47, had already driven off both home invaders, saving the lives of his mother and 3 siblings. In a statement here, they say, Metro said when officers arrived at the scene, they found Jesus, or maybe I'm assuming that's Jesus Javier Sanchez, standing in the yard with an AK-47. Officers said when they approached Sanchez, he immediately dropped the rifle and followed their commands. That's pretty smart. Police said that they started checking the home to make sure that it was secure. They found several bullet holes in the front door and a black semi-automatic handgun. Investigating it further inside the home, officers say they found another handgun lying on the bed and a trail of blood leading from the house down the driveway into the street. Metro Police said witness said that the suspects fled the scene in a gold-colored Oldsmobile shortly before 9:30 a.m. So this is a broad daylight robbery. Officers received a call from North Vista Hospital personnel saying that they had just had 2 people arrive there in their emergency room with gunshot wounds. The 2 people turned out to be the suspects from the home invasion. North Vista Hospital told officers the male suspect was dead. Harris was transported to University Medical Center due to the severity of her injuries. So, this is one thing that I just want to point out, that, we're told that these kind of things, they do not happen. Like, there's no situations at all that the average citizen uses a firearm to defend themselves. This is something that the left-wing media would like us to believe, that, all the only things that happen with firearms are people use them to commit crimes. However, that's just not the case, and statistics actually do not back that up. This is just one of the cases where, somebody has used an assault rifle, which, by the way, I just need to point out. That an assault rifle is not a semi-automatic rifle, all right? This is a misconception in the media. This is a misconception among popular opinion from people who just don't know. And, there's nothing wrong with being ignorant about a topic. There's no issue. If you don't know something about a topic, that's fine. That doesn't make you a stupid person. That just makes you uninformed on that particular issue. However, what I have an issue with is when you pretend that you know what you're talking about and you start labeling things something that are only intended to incite fear and panic among the population regarding that something that you know nothing about. So what a definition of an assault rifle is a fully automatic weapon. You pull the trigger, multiple bullets come out. Even a burst weapon could possibly be considered an assault rifle. But anyone that tries to delude themselves or others into thinking that, for example, an AR-15 is an assault rifle, and they say, well, look, it has AR in it, that stands for assault rifle. That is actually 100% incorrect. AR, an assault rifle, stands for Armalite Rifle, and that was named after the company who made it in the 1950s. So it has absolutely nothing to do with being an assault rifle. Anyway, our next story we have here is another incident that is likely self-defense shooting here. Police say a man, by the way, this is on Visalia Times Delta, I believe, VisaliaTimesDelta.com, and a story written by David Costellan. Police say a man reportedly forced his way into his family's home late Sunday night and attacked people there when somebody in South Visalia apartment shot him. Tyler Monk, age 20, was taken to the medical center in Visalia with multiple gunshot wounds where he died. Visalia, I'm having trouble with that word. Visalia police said the shooting appears to be a case of self-defense, so no arrest for this case is planned. So, again, another likely self-defense shooting. We're being told that these kind of things do not happen, and they do. They happen all over America almost every day. And, what's crazy, too, is that these are just the ones that are reported online on these stories online. I can find new ones for every show, pretty much. I mean, the only times I never do it is when we have too much stuff going on. So this happens so often. Anyway, with that said, we're going to go ahead and move on. I just want to give you guys a heads up that personally, I love hearing about these kind of stories. So if you have any other stories, send them my way. I love hearing about how law-abiding citizens use their firearms to protect themselves. You have a right to defend your life and the lives of your family. You have a right to defend your property, and you have a right to defend your freedom. We at On The Move, we support your rights. And if you have a story about how you lawfully defended yourself, or you'd like to comment on one of these stories, we'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. Or you can email the show at talk@OnTheMoveShow. And with that said, we're going to cut to our first commercial break. When we come back, I believe we have Allison Bricker on the line here. So we're going to go ahead and start our interview with her. You guys aren't going to want to go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. But now your host, Mack Worley III.
And we're back. So we have a caller here on the line. We're going to go ahead and take the call. Hey, caller, give us your name and where you're calling from.
Hello, this is Allison Bricker. I'm calling from northeastern Indiana at the moment.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, I'm really, really excited to have you on the show, Allison. First of all, for those of you who do not know, Allison is a station manager over at LibertyTalk.fm, and she's gracing us with her presence today. I'm really excited to have her on, and she's also the host of the Allison Bricker Show. So first of all, Allison, I just want to say thanks so much for joining us today.
Well, no problem, and thank you for having me on the show. I really was looking forward to the interview.
Oh, awesome, cool. Okay, so first things first, I just want to talk about you particularly as far as what got you into the Liberty movement. You know, what has been inspiring you recently as well?
Well, that's a long question. Growing up in my household in northwest Indiana, we lived just outside of Chicago, and my mother and my grandmother, the pastime was to basically drink obscene amounts of coffee, smoke chain cigarettes, and talk politics. So pretty much from a young age, the idea of debating political issues was literally at my mother's kitchen table. And so to be invited to the kitchen table to talk with my mother and my grandmother was kind of like a rite of passage. And my mom, she was a total hippie. We grew up as Democrats. When I discovered the Libertarian Party in like 1996 or whatever, I remember showing my mother the flyer, and she thought, well, how come everyone is a Libertarian? And it's just been kind of an ongoing process on the train of liberty because like I said, we grew up Democrats. There was a period of time where I actually thought I was kind of Republican. But after 2012, I'm fully in the voluntarist camp and have pretty much given up on the institution of voting. But at the same time, I'm super excited because, like, for the first time in human history, there are so many tools available to the individual to peacefully bypass the system that it's just an amazing time to be alive.
Absolutely. You know, I definitely wouldn't disagree. I think as far as times to be alive, this is up there for me as far as advances to make individuals empowered, and I think that to me is what I always try to look for an answer, solutions to problems. Is how can we not look towards the government to solve the answer or to become the answer to the problem, but how can we empower the citizens? How can we empower just the average person? And I think today, I mean, this is evidence right here. We're communicating in a long distance fashion, you know, and this could be, we could even have a video chat over Skype if we wanted to right now, and we're doing it in front of for a live audience on a podcast. I think this kind of medium, this kind of time right now, it's amazing what we can do, and I think I'm really excited to see what the future is going to bring.
Well, absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head. And here's the other really exciting thing: we're doing this without a permission slip. We're not asking the FCC to approve this broadcast, which really kind of corrupts the entire notion of freedom of speech. I don't know how much history you know about the whole scheme of public licensing, but basically after 100 years, of public broadcast licensing, you've got 6 companies that own 95% of everything you read, see, and hear, and it's just another example of how corporatist the U.S. government is.
Absolutely, and it's the illusion of choice. I think I was watching. I think it was Food Incorporated is a documentary on how food is made and stuff like that, and the companies behind it. And essentially, they were saying that there's only a handful of companies out there that produce and manufacture the food that are in our grocery stores, and you have hundreds of labels that are saying that it's owned by these different companies, but it's really all owned by just a few of these companies. So you're getting the illusion of choice, just like you're getting the illusion of variety on is on television and whatnot. I think that the internet is it's so exciting what's going on. I mean, there's independent media out there. You can hear other points of view in a way that just would have not happened in the past. I mean, even just 20 years ago, this is unheard of.
Yeah, absolutely. And if there was any success or true win, in my opinion, out of Ron Paul's campaigns, both in 2007 and then 2011 to 2012, it was the fact that an old white man could bypass the old traditional old media outlets and have gay, straight, black, white, young, old, hanging from trees across the country at college campuses, literally standing room only, to hear this guy talk about liberty. And it was all done outside of your traditional broadcast medium. And again, I mean, you talk about the illusion of choice, you also then have the illusion of protection through these phony regulatory agencies. You correctly point out that, there are only a handful of companies in the food business, and it's really no coincidence that no matter what industry you're looking at, the corresponding alphabet soup agency is staffed by those very same executives and former lobbyists. I mean, and this is exactly why Tom Wheeler, who was a bundler for President Obama and a former lobbyist for telco and the wireless industry, became the head of was appointed the FCC head, and that's where they rolled out this net neutrality, because to the federal government, they realized too late that the toothpaste is out of the tube with the internet. To me, it is our Gutenberg press. There has been no time in history that the average person could publish on demand, can start up a radio station out of her basement, and host a show, and just do all of these excellent things like make T-shirts, communicate, publish blogs. And again, it's all being done without permission slips from some sort of, mortar on the public bureaucrat granting you some sort of license, which is why it's just so incredibly awesome to be alive.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, one of the things you mentioned about how the government was kind of slow to react to realize how influential the internet really is. And, I personally, that's one thing I like about governments is that they are slow and they're not able to keep up with technology at a rate to be able to stifle it unless they actually control the manufacturing in it. But still, I think that individual citizens will find a way to innovate to get around the government. That's just, history has proven that to be true. I'd like to ask you your opinion because, it's some people who may think that we're anti-business. Personally, I consider myself a capitalist or a supporter of capitalists, but not a supporter of corporatism. And would you talk to our audience about the difference between capitalism and corporatism?
Right on, yeah. Well, I myself am an entrepreneur. I was downsized out of my position, laid off from corporate America back in 2003, and so I do not have any problem with business. I love business, and really, it's the individuals entrepreneuring away in their garage, in their basement, in their shed, that really drive the economic growth and the increased quality of life for the average human like no other time in human history. The problem comes in is when you have these mergers between government and corporations. And what you see is that these corporations, they don't want to compete. they want special protections. And so you end up with lobbyist arms that are spending millions and millions of dollars to basically get protection rackets installed to raise the barriers of entry, to basically, like a weed killer, stifle competition. And so what you end up with is this weird, incestuous relationship that is not at all capitalism, but they nevertheless continue to try to paint it as capitalist. But it is crony capitalism, fascism, as Mussolini defined it, or more commonly now in the lexicon, it's corporatism. So you have basically large corporate agents running public policy out of the district of criminals, and that's really where the problem comes in.
Exactly, and it's not, for me, if there's a company that's innovating and they're cornering the market essentially because their product is so good, I don't have an issue with that. Where I do have an issue is where these companies hire lobbyists and they cozy up and they bribe politicians through campaign contributions and whatnot. And in doing this, they're saying, well, okay, here's a great example. I'll just give you guys a quick example. Monsanto, they have gone through great lengths to basically drive the little guy out of business in the farming industry. So some of the things that they'll do is they'll go into a congressman's office and say, hey, we need to have harder regulations on this industry. It needs to have higher safety standards. You need this $100,000 piece of machinery to make sure it's safe. And then what that does is Monsanto, that's a drop in the bucket for them to buy one of those $100,000 pieces of machinery. But, mom and pop farmers, they can't afford that. So it actually benefits Monsanto to pay that little bit of money to get this upgraded thing that's not really required, that's never been needed, but it's all in the name of safety to the public. But really what it is it's just a backdoor deal to basically kick their competition out. And those are the kind of corporate deals that I have a problem with. Are you familiar with what's going on with vaping and the big tobacco and everything, Allison?
Well, I actually tried to vape, but yeah, that's an excellent example of big tobacco really didn't realize what was going on with vaping. It's proven to be successful by a lot of self-reporting people saying that it's helped them stop smoking or reduce their tobacco use greatly. And so then you see these stories kind of leaking out into the mainstream old media that e-cigarettes are exploding, and you're putting antifreeze in your body, let alone that traditional cigarettes from big tobacco has over 100 different chemicals in it. Yeah, that's an excellent example. But I got to say that something that's more insidious is the progressive use of corporatism. For example, the same deal with the mom and pops. Right, the $15 an hour minimum wage is another example of trying to destroy small business, because whereas your McDonald's and your Long John Silver's or these other large food chains can afford to automate to dishwashers or automate to touchscreens, your little mom and pop diners can't afford to pay a dishwasher $45,000 a year. And I know that's not what $15 an hour equates to, but if you're a business owner, then you realize that on average, in addition to the wage that you pay your employee, there's usually about another $10,000 to $12,000 of regulatory taxes and other sorts of compliances that then you pay in addition to their wage. And so they sell this idea as helping the little guy, but really it's destroying small business, and the $15 an hour minimum wage is just one of those examples.
That's actually a really great example. And it's funny because many people that support the $15 an hour minimum wage, if you ask them, how they feel about, big companies like Walmart essentially pushing out their competition, the mom and pop stores, a lot of them would have a major issue. I know several people that I personally know that hate Walmart unequivocally. They hate Walmart, and they'll never shop, but they support $15 minimum wage, which in turn helps Walmart push their competition out. And even if they have to pay more in employee costs, if there's no more competition in that area, they're going to be making more money because more people will be shopping at Walmart.
Right. It's just a temporary loss leader. While in the interim, while all these other companies are shutting down, and for the record, I have not shopped. I'll date myself, but I have not shopped at Walmart since I graduated in 1994. because Walmart is absolutely just one of the most despicable examples. I mean, they use eminent domain constantly to get tax abatements and to basically crush small neighborhoods, tear down people's houses. And yes, so for a period of time, they will be able to lose money paying more employees, but in the long term, they'll crush every other small business, which then they can go ahead and then automate. You know, you look at all of these different institutions or these small jobs that are gone. The full-service gas station attendant, the grocery bagger, just the theater usher. These kind of positions that were available to children to gain experience, to get into the workforce, are now gone. And you have to wonder why. Well, it's because companies have to cut costs because payroll is one of the most expensive aspects of running a business. So yeah, in the long run, that's exactly what Walmart's going to do. It'll be a loss leader for a while until ABC Hardware goes out of business.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and that's one of the things that absolutely happens all the time when Walmart moves in. You know, they can afford to pay higher wages until they stamp out their competition. They can lower their prices until they do the same thing. And you mentioned automating different jobs and things along those lines. You know, one reason why these kind of things come along is because, again, people are trying to get around government and lower their bottom line essentially. So we're seeing in California, for example, there are kiosks now that are replacing cashiers and things along those lines, low skill positions, and it definitely is proportionally related to where minimum wage has increased dramatically. So again, I just think this is another perfect example of people finding a way to get around government and innovating and coming up with ways to get around these progressive policies.
Yeah, absolutely. The only reason that I've founded LibertyTalk.fm was because I can write code to basically automate the entire process, right? I didn't have to hire 7 different board operators to basically run the station. I can use code to automate it. I didn't have to purchase a $50,000 broadcast license, so I could create a radio station. And you're exactly right. I'm not against automation, but I am when it's purposely used to basically crush competition. Because, again, like a large chain, the software that I use is nowhere comparable to something like these touchscreens at a McDonald's or these U-scans. I don't know if you guys have those in California at your grocery stores where you can just basically check yourself out of the store. There's no interaction with a real human being at all. You scan your groceries, you put them in the bag, and then you pay for it, and you walk out of the grocery store with your groceries, but there's no human interaction whatsoever. Small little grocery chains or small little diners can't afford that massive capital investment for new automated equipment. These are big pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
And so they're lost. They can be absorbed on the bottom line for a huge corporation, whereas they can't. For me, the minimum wage issue comes down to, like, when I find that they support the $15 an hour minimum wage, I ask them, well, why is it? Answer this question and you'll understand, well, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour is not the solution. Because figure out why the 1964 minimum wage is actually $18.12 an hour in 2015 dollars. And when you figure out why that is, then you will understand that whether you raise it to $15 an hour or $25 an hour, you're not going to lift anyone out of poverty. And in fact, you're going to hurt everyone else down the line because their wages are then further devalued.
Well, I think right now I'm reading Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. So, this is something that's kind of been pounded in my head after reading this book. Essentially, what it boils down to is redistribution of wealth. The entire idea of trying to take money from others and give to others who may deserve it more or need it more. What it actually is doing is you're taking capital, essentially. That people have a limited amount of money. So if I'm now forced as a business owner to pay you more money, that's taking away money that would have went to other sectors of the economy. First of all, maybe I would have spent my profits instead of buying a giant yacht or something. Now I'm not employing yacht builders and things like that. I'm spending it on you. Maybe I would have been using it to upgrade my services in my store, buying more, automated machines and things like that, employing other people. And it's very unlikely that somebody's just going to hoard their money for no purpose other than just having it or rolling around in a bathtub with it. But
right. Well, especially at a 0% interest rate, there's no real reason to actually try to save your money.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's no incentive, because nobody's paying interest.
Yeah. So I mean, the concept of taking this money that belong to this this business owner and now forcing him to spend more money on someone else in another area, all that's doing is taking away money from other people and in the economy in other areas. And that's something that these people, it's, I'm sure it's the seen and the unseen effects. People who call for these kind of progressive agendas, they only talk about the effects that you see. You only see that guy with $15 more, but you don't see the fact that now all the prices have to raise for the services that they're now providing. People may be let off or let go because they can't afford to hire them. Businesses may close. Now money in other sectors of the economy isn't being spent. These are all the unseen effects, but no one's supposed to think about that. Just think about the feel-good effects of somebody getting $15 an hour and not the people that are unemployed now.
Right, exactly. I mean, the more people that they can push onto the government dole, onto the federal plantation, the better, right? Because I mean, as they take more and more from the average productive class person, that person has a less of an ability to provide for their own family. So what happens to them? They then have to go into government assistance, right? And so there's one less person that is truly being productive, and they're then part of that system. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just is every progressive platform agenda item always has these rosy, shiny, awesome-sounding results, but the consequences are nearly throughout history the exact opposite of what was intended. The 17th Amendment, which was the direct election of senators, if you go back and read the editorials about how wonderful this was going to be to have direct elections, and it was going to put the small person in power, was going to reduce corruption in government, and was going to give the people more authority into their federal government, everything is the opposite. You had senators that, on average, served 10 years to now 36 years. You had campaign expenditures to become a senator that, in today's dollars, were equated to approximately $100,000. Now you have $36 million campaigns. Mm-hmm. And you have people, the electorate no longer know any of their state representatives at all, and the real reason, I don't know how much you've ever studied the Federal Reserve or the bank wars, but the real reason to get direct election of senators is it's infinitely easier to bribe 100 senators that are beholden to a popular election that need campaign dollars that are all located in Washington, as opposed to having to bribe the thousands of individual state legislators in the individual states in order who, at once upon a time, selected the senators and sent them to Washington. And guess who was behind that progressive platform? J.P. Morgan, right? And the same thing with, women's rights. They told us that, this is going to be excellent. We were going to be on par with men. Women have a right to be in the workforce. But what did it really do? It really just doubled their tax base and destroyed the family. And now one person basically has to work just to pay the tax burden of the family. And meanwhile, no one is at home capable of raising these children. And so we have just a downward spiraling effect. It wasn't an uplifting thing as promised. It ended up being a negative impact on the quality of life of the average person.
Wow. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I love the fact that you mentioned something that a lot of people don't talk about, and it's the whole concept of it being basically you're centralizing power when you have enacted the 17th Amendment, which took the vote for senators out of the state legislators and gave it to the popular vote of the American people. You've basically centralized the power, and you've removed a check and balance, some of the state sovereignty. I've discussed this in infinitum on previous episodes, but this is a major thing, though, when you're talking about it being easier to bribe. All you have to do at this point is bribe the members of the Senate, as opposed to bribing all of the members of the state legislators who elect the senators, because those are the people who you would have to do to basically get around that if you're trying to force your policy upon the Senate. One thing I wanted to talk about to you, and actually I want to get your take on this. What do you define legalized plunder as?
any initiation of force that removes the property of an individual without their consent. That would be plunder to me, as Bastiat said, basically taking without permission from one person their property and redistributing that to the winners as chosen by the state.
And why would it be a bad idea? Obviously, I'm playing devil's advocate here. Why is it a bad idea to take from one group of people and give to another?
Well, because then you're harming you're stealing, or you're harming one group of people to benefit another specifically selected collective.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, and you know, I absolutely agree. This is one concept that I don't understand morally how someone can get past the idea of taking from someone else, one group, and giving to another. I understand a general purpose of essentially the general welfare of what would generally benefit everyone, you know, in a situation where if we need a bridge or something, we all come together and collectively pool our money together to build a bridge. But not to take from one special interest group and give to another. I mean, at this point, you're essentially, you know, weaponizing the law and using it to target one group and another, and you're incentivizing people to get more lobbyists and to do the same process that we all are pissed off about to begin with.
Well, and here's the other thing that it does. It divides us amongst these stupid people groups. It takes us from being productive citizens or productive individuals. I don't like the word citizen. Productive individuals as just neighbors, human beings, and it puts our label, white, black, gay, straight, Christian, Muslim, because that's always what it is. It's always used against those kind of opposite sort of people groups. You know, because the gays want something in particular, then the Christians are all upset, or vice versa, black, white, whatever it is. So it keeps all of us, the people, fighting amongst each other. Meanwhile, Leviathan continues to grow and then passes out the bounty to its favored corporations. And we're all here slinging mud back at each other and really to the detriment of ourselves.
Exactly. The house always wins. It's a casino system.
The house always wins, exactly,
yeah.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like no matter what, they've set the system up right now to where we fight amongst ourselves, and no matter what, they profit. You know, they're stealing money from one group to give to another, and they always get their cut, always. So,
absolutely. Let me give you this example, right? The immigration debate is just like a perfect example of pitting people against each other. Okay, so you have conservatives who are really upset over this horrible influx of Mexicans. You see always these hyperbolic kind of headlines about an immigrant kills an American. Well, how many Americans kill other Americans on a day? I don't know, but that's beside the point. So, but here's what you end up with. You have these conservatives, basically foaming at the mouth to do something to clamp down on illegal immigration. You know, people that are crossing these arbitrary coloring book lines, because people coming in from Oklahoma into California, as Robert Higgs has pointed out, would be one example. And so what does this really accomplish, right? So these people are begging for heavier change, because here's what's going to happen through immigration reform. I mean, Charles Schumer has introduced basically the same exact bill for the last decade. And that bill includes a national ID, biometric national ID, and a worker database, which means you would have to be an approved individual to be able to actually toil your trade in order to earn a living. Wow. So you end up with the Berlin Wall on the southern border and a centralized massive database where you have to literally ask permission to be able to work. And so that's what's going to be the result of immigration reform. And to me, that you really don't want to make your chains any heavier. So stop asking your daddy government to, increase the weight on your shackles.
You know, I mean, that is some very Big Brother-esque type scenarios that you're talking about. And for me, you know, I'm never for increasing, you know, governmental power or the federal Leviathan. However, I personally, in the words of... of course, Milton. What is his name? I forgot it now.
Friedman?
Yeah, there we go. Milton Friedman. There we go. In the words of Milton Friedman, you can't have open borders in a welfare state. So I do recognize that right now all these entitlement programs where, even Americans, I'm not even just talking specifically about illegal immigrants, even Americans many of us are spending are spending like 50% or more of our wages on taxes. We're being taxed more now than we've ever been in history, and some people just aren't pulling their weight. And then in addition to that, if we have illegal immigrants able to come in and pull that kind of redistribution of wealth and do nothing for it and just sit there and collect money, that is also an issue. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. But it is interesting if you look out throughout history that when you have large influxes of immigrants, illegal or legal, generally the population is less likely to provide a welfare state. Throughout history, usually a welfare system shrinks. But it's all boondoggle because, the U.S. government wages a drug war in Mexico. The Mexican country is a complete just disaster area through the drug war. We have the American government has set up this gigantic entitlement program. So if I'm a Mexican in Mexico and I see all of these narco cartels like kidnapping people, 7-10 people a day, murdering the police in the streets, stringing them up from stoplights, guess what? I definitely want to get my family out of there any way possible. And, it would be nice to go to the country where they do have free everything. So you can't really fault the people for, wanting to come across the border to get here. America has destroyed their country, and what this has done again has pitted people against one another when it's government policy that has created both the emphasis to come to this country in the first place and set the environmental tone of destruction through the drug war to motivate them to come north. So it's not the immigrant, it's the governmental policy, and the answer will be a Berlin Wall on the southern border and a national biometric identification card. Show me your papers, please. And that's not a solution. I mean, do you realize until when I was first born, you could literally go to 15 different countries without a passport. By 1979, I could still go to Mexico and Canada without a passport. Mm-hmm. Now, I can't go anywhere without a passport, without my government papers. I can't leave this country. And when a country is beginning to collapse and become a totalitarian regime throughout history, one of the first things they do is make it much more difficult to leave. And after 9/11 was the justification, you cannot leave the contiguous United States unless you have a passport. And just for giggles, go download the passport application. You basically have to give them every piece of information that you close enough to your firstborn and your right leg. I know a lot of people thought Ron Paul was completely insane when he said they were building that wall, myself included. I was like, whoa, you just completely you lost me in South Carolina. When he said they were building that wall to keep us in. In fact, I talked to people who didn't want to donate to the campaign anymore because of that statement. But he's right. He was right. And we need to not advocate for our shackles to be heavier. It's just not. People coming somewhere to work to try to find a better life, that's not a bad thing. That's economic progress, that's economic growth, that's the blending of cultures which has actually pushed this country forward in the history, whether it was the Irish immigrants of the 1800s or now the Mexican immigrants. The anger is misdirected at the people coming here because the U.S. government created both the policy and the enticement to get them here.
Well, I think you're right in some ways, and I disagree in other ways. Regarding Mexico's instability and whatnot, I just want to point out that this is news today. El Chapo, the cartel leader, he's actually escaped from prison. I believe it was yesterday or today, and apparently they tunneled right into his prison cell, I guess, and broke him out. This is a second prison escape, and that just shows you the kind of security situation that they have there. the cartels have essentially taken over down there. And
yeah, absolutely.
They have. It's a scary thought to think that a secure border would be used not to keep us safe, as we're told, but to try to keep us in and secure. And it is very Big Brother. And part of me, I really have. I hate the excuse of security, national security. Everything is trumped as soon as you say national security. So in a lot of ways, I agree with you. But at the same time, I don't think that an open border is necessarily a solution that we need right now. Benjamin Franklin once said, I believe, that a country that can't secure its border can't secure its destiny. And I happen to agree with that.
Right, but again, a lot of those guys, the founding generation, they may have given us the greatest example of parchment porn with a small government. But a lot of them were slaveholders. Franklin was an abolitionist. They absolutely abhorred the Native Americans. And again, I say, what's the problem with Oklahomans coming over into California? What's the problem with people from Illinois coming into Indiana? Mm-hmm. The problem isn't people. The problem is governmental policy. And, even Mitt Romney's uncle, who is a Mormon in Mexico, because many Mormons left to go to Mexico after the government said you had to get rid of polygamy if you wanted to be a state, Utah. A lot of them went down to Mexico. Even Mitt Romney's uncle, who lives down there, he cites the drug war as the reason that everyone, the guns come in from America and the drugs go into America, and so do the immigrants. If you did not have this drug war, you wouldn't have basically the economic engine to create such a lousy system. Because I don't know about you, but if I was living in a city somewhere where the cops were being gutted and hung from stoplights, mm-hmm. I think I'd want to leave.
Yeah,
I think I'd want to get as far away from that place as possible.
Yeah, I completely agree with you as far as reasons to leave. But at the same time, we have to look out for ourselves as well. This is an issue that for me I'm torn on. Because I don't.
No, I completely understand. There was a time. It was the one question on the world's smallest political quiz for a long time, mm-hmm. back in 1996, probably all the way to 2009, really, mm-hmm. That I could not answer, should there be open borders. But I'm fortunate enough to follow and kind of have exchanged words with Robert Higgs in a polite way. And I don't know if you've ever read Crisis in Leviathan by Robert Higgs, or his work from the Independent Institute on Immigration. He speaks much more eloquently than I can, but I would highly recommend both his book, Crisis in Leviathan, and his article on immigration that was over at the Independent Institute. Well, he's really a very smart man. We are lucky. You quote Benjamin Franklin. We are really lucky to have some just really excellent minds living at the same time, and Robert Higgs would be one of those guys. He is just a giant. He's just a giant intellectual. He's just a nice guy.
Well, I'm writing it down right now. I'm always looking for new reading material. So for me, I will be getting that book very shortly. Then I appreciate the tip on that. So I want.
Yeah, no problem.
I want to, because we're going to be covering some topics here pretty shortly here. But some of our featured topics today, I want to get your opinion on this and just see kind of where you stand on these issues here. I want to talk about the whitewashing of history, essentially, where we're basically trying to remove parts of our history that we don't necessarily like, or we're not fond of these parts of our history, but however they are still parts of our history, like, for example, the Civil War, the Confederate flag, things along those lines. What do you think about that aspect of it, trying to remove the flag from everywhere, basically banning it and things along those lines?
Well, from a government standpoint, should it fly on a state capitol? I don't know. I look, from a personal standpoint, I no longer consent to be ruled by the criminal regime in the District of Criminals. I just simply don't. If the Declaration of Independence, if you believe in it at all, if governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed, I no longer consent to be ruled by this government. But that notwithstanding, the Civil War is a complex issue. One of their primary gripes was the use of nullification by northern states that were nullifying the fugitive slave law, which basically said if you had a runaway slave in your possession, you were supposed to contact federal marshals and return them to their slave owners. That was one of the main gripes of the Confederacy. Am I against secession as a whole? Absolutely not. The Declaration of Independence was basically the secession away from Great Britain. Did Abraham Lincoln wage the war correctly? No, that guy was a monster. He hated black people. He didn't free the slaves, and he murdered or gave green light approval to murder civilians in order to crush, quote, crush the soul and spirit of the Confederacy. Now, from a historical standpoint, absolutely, history should be a true history. Should we know that the South seceded away from the Union? Absolutely. But the other problem that I have with this argument is when people basically are intellectually dishonest and try to pretend that the Civil War was not about slavery. The South wanted to keep people in bondage. They did. But, they did. Did Abraham Lincoln refuse a peace delegation before the war began at Fort Sumter from the South? Did the South try to avoid war? Absolutely. But the point remains that the South seceded for slavery. It was one of their primary gripes in their petition for secession. But should it be washed away and forgotten? Absolutely not. I think people should expose Lincoln, and people should continue to question why America was the only civilized, in quotes, country that had to wage a bloody war that killed hundreds of thousands of people when every other country in the Western Hemisphere settled it peacefully. So, yeah. But here's what it is. It's the centralization of power. And so on that aspect, I understand the rebel bars. I understand that the federal government doesn't want people to realize that there's anything other than their daddy government, one central daddy government. And anyone who wants to have some form of self-government is somehow automatically a racist. So we need to have these discussions. But I just hope they can be intellectually honest. I see both sides. When I see the stuff on Facebook that says the Civil War had nothing to do with slavery, I shake my head and I wonder, how can you possibly say that? Read the petition for secession put up forward by the Confederated States of America. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree. It was definitely part of the platform, essentially.
It totally was. But the notion and the principle of secession itself is beautiful, because people should be able to say, I no longer consent to be ruled by this particular group of people. Hopefully we're a little better off and you're not seceding so you can keep other people in bondage, because that's really kind of a mutated, twisted way of like taking your ball and going home.
And it's
but
interesting.
Nevertheless, I mean, secession and the right to self-rule is absolutely important. And again, this country just celebrated its 239th anniversary of seceding away from Great Britain.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another one of those kind of nuances that are lost, right, in government schools.
Exactly. And I think it's interesting, though, to point out that, Lincoln said that he went to war essentially to preserve the Union. And he's not saying that he went to war to stop slavery. So, in essence, what he's saying is that if they were trying to secede for any other reason, whether they believed that the federal Leviathan had already grown too big at that point and they didn't want to consent to it anymore, he would have essentially done the same thing. It wasn't about slavery for Lincoln, it was about preserving the Union.
Absolutely, because why was West Virginia allowed to secede away from Virginia proper? How come because West Virginia joined the Union, how come that's secession away from that state? That was okay.
Yeah.
But the rest of secession was not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's not one of those black and white issues. There are no good guys in the Civil War, in my opinion. I think it's a tragic, shades of gray kind of scenario, and it's really a disappointing situation when you realize that there are no good guys in one.
No. It's a perfect illustration of the monstrosity of the state. Both sides. From Lincoln and Sherman's March to the Sea, murdering and raping and pillaging and burning civilian property to the ground, and the South trying to secede because they so wanted to protect the institution of slavery. It's an all-around just bad example of what happens with giant governments.
Yeah, and it's just disappointing though, because growing up, obviously, I'm sure you are probably like me, maybe not, but I know growing up in school, I was always told that the North were the good guys, the South were the bad guys. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
essentially they already whitewashed the history up to that point. But as you said, it was a very complex issue. But Allison, we gotta take off. I want to give you an opportunity. Where can people go? Do you have anything you want to plug? Your show, Liberty F.
Well,
LibertyTalk.fm?
I want to thank you for letting me be on the show, and my show has been on hiatus as I'm managing the station as we're growing LibertyTalk.fm. We have an excellent lineup of hosts. I hope you'll check out like Robin Kerner from the Huffington Post and Mark Claire from Lions of Liberty. All live content Monday through Friday. You can see us over at LibertyTalk.fm.
Yes, ma'am. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for joining us, and I really do appreciate your time.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I hope we get to talk again soon.
Oh, me too. Hey, you're welcome back anytime. Just let me know.
All right, you take care and have an awesome week.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. I'm noticing that we're at the last hour here of our program. That means if you're on the 405media.com, you're going to end the broadcast here. But if you want to listen, you can go over to OnTheMoveShow.com and listen right there. I just want to say thanks so much for your time. We'll be right back after this break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about a few of our featured topics, and I will be having, in about 15 minutes, Tyler Truitt on the show to discuss his case with a local government, basically trying to tell him how he can use his land. So anyway, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. But now your host, Mack Worley III.
I definitely had too much coffee this morning. I feel like I'm running about 100 miles an hour, so I apologize if we're going quickly here through everything, everybody, but there's a lot of news, a lot of stuff going on. First of all, if you are just joining the program, in our first hour, we had Allison Bricker on the program. She's the station manager at LibertyTalk.fm. She joined us today. We talked about a whole bunch of wonderful topics. I'm actually really happy with her coming on the show. I thought that was an awesome interview. I hope she comes back soon, because that was a lot of fun. I had a good time doing that. So. Anyway, in addition to that, later we're going to be having, in a couple of minutes here, we're going to have Tyler Truitt on the program at 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 6:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And anyway, I just want to point out a conversation here that's one of our featured topics here. But I find this kind of weird and upsetting. I don't understand why this is happening, and to me it's one of those circumstances when, you know, it's a specific group, all right, in this case I'm talking about the homosexuals being able to marry each other. Now, that's great. I am for same-sex marriage. I think the real problem here is not who gets married, when, how, what. It's the fact that the government is involved in the decision at all. They have absolutely no place in marriage, in my personal opinion. So, but what I have an issue with is when it's no longer about us being accepting of somebody else's, you know, way of life or being tolerant of it, when we're basically being forced to submit to change in some way because of their way of life. You know, even though what we're doing is not hurting them negatively in any way. And what am I talking about? Right now there is a movement that they're trying to basically change in federal law to make it so it says spouse and spouse instead of husband and wife. And I have an issue with it. I got a clip here from that. I'm going to go ahead and play it real quick.
I now declare you spouse and spouse. 24 Democrats now pushing to eliminate the terms husband and wife from federal law. Lawmakers say the so-called gendered terms should be replaced by more neutral words like spouse or married couple. Well, this comes after the Supreme Court ruled that all states must issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
So, you know, first of all, I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you guys have anything on this topic that you'd like to get off your chest, feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 425-5625, I think. Hold on. I got to look that up here. No, I messed that up. Don't call that number. I don't know who that'll be. 360-450-5625. Actually, we got a caller right now calling in. We'll go ahead and take the call. Here we go. Hey, caller, first of all, what's your name? Where are you calling from? Hey, caller, are you there?
Hello?
Hey, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Tyler Truitt, calling from Alabama.
Oh, great. All right. You're a little early, but this is great. Well, I'm actually really excited to have you on, man. So just so you know, you're live on the air right now, and I just want to first let everyone know that Tyler is right now in the middle of a legal battle, and he's basically fighting his local government over how he's going to use his land. So, Tyler, let's go ahead and start from the beginning. First of all, from what I remember, you were former military. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, and how long did you serve in the military?
5 years active duty.
Yes, sir. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was the Marine Corps, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, so now you've gotten out and you've purchased a plot of land, and you're trying to basically move a trailer or a mobile home or something along those lines onto this property. And what's happening?
Right, we've already got our house, our mobile home moved onto the property, and the city has come and they're basically trying to kick us out of here because they say that we're not allowed to have what they call a trailer inside the city limits. I've made the argument that our house is not actually a trailer. Or how would you define trailer? It's a manufactured home, and their ordinance uses the term trailer. But because of that, they're trying to force us to move our house, and because of that, they wouldn't issue us any type of permitting to be here. So, I had originally asked, well, what is the purpose of this ordinance? And no one could tell me. And to me, I just thought, because I had asked zoning, I had asked planning, I had asked engineering, inspections, and no one could give me any reason for the purposes of this ordinance that says no trailers are allowed within city limits. And to me, I just felt like it was basically economic discrimination, because I said, if you can't give me any reason as to how this protects the public health, safety, and welfare, I would judge this to be an illegitimate, an arbitrary and capricious ordinance. And I told them that I would go to court with them on that. So when they did come eventually to issue us the citation for the zoning ordinance, they also sent or called the community development department to come out here and condemn our house to try to get us out of here. And I said, well, condemn it for what? And they said it's unsafe living conditions. They had declined to give us the permits to have any of our utilities hooked up, which was fine with me because I was planning to make all my utilities off grid anyway. and they say that we're not allowed to do that. So because of the fact that we're not hooked up to city utilities, they now try to say that it's unsafe living conditions, and they're trying to, well, because of that, they condemn our house, and they threatened to arrest us if we didn't leave. They say it would be trespassing on our own property.
Unbelievable. Okay, so I gotta ask a couple questions here. All right. First things first. How big is this plot of land that you have?
It's a little bit over 2 acres.
Okay, and can you see any neighbors from your property?
No, sir. We're at the end of a dead-end street, and we're pretty much covered all the way around by trees. You really can't even see like the next door neighbor's house from where we're at. You definitely can't see our house from the end of the road.
Okay, so basically, you're not even in visual sight of your neighbors. So it's not even like they could justify that your trailer or mobile home, manufactured home, is somehow an eyesore or something to the neighborhood, right? Because no one can even see it unless they're on your property, right?
You're right. You actually have to come into the property to even be able to see our house where we have it located. And also, before I moved in here, this was just an empty lot full of grown-up weeds. I had to have it bush hogged when I bought the property. So, I mean, how was me having a house here any worse than that?
Absolutely. I mean, it could be argued that your home beautifies the plot of land as opposed to how it was. Would you agree with that?
Well, you could say that. I mean, we keep the property maintained and our grass cut and stuff like that. So, but I mean, again, it's out of sight. You can't really see the majority of my property from the road anyway. You definitely can't see our house. So, like I said, I don't see how we're really hurting anyone by being here.
Exactly. Yeah, and okay, so the argument is that it's an unsafe living condition. Did they give you any reasons why it's unsafe other than the fact that it's a manufactured home?
Well, the unsafe living conditions, see, I'm really fighting them on 2 fronts. They're trying to make us move the house because it's a manufactured home, and because of that, we're in violation of the city's zoning ordinance. But the unsafe living conditions, that citation was made by the Community Development Department, and they say it's unsafe living conditions because of the fact that we're not hooked up to city utilities. Well, even if I wanted to hook up to city utilities, I couldn't because they denied us the permits to hook up to it because of the fact that it's a mobile home.
I see. So they create the problem and then say that you're violating it because they've created this issue to begin with. However, first of all, it's your property, and I happen to agree wholeheartedly that you should be able to do whatever you want with it. And if you want to live off the grid, if you don't want to have, municipal, water or power, I think you should be entitled to do that. I mean, that's absolutely your right to use your property how you're doing it, as long as you're not hurting others or depriving others of their rights. So let's say, for example, if you were stealing other people's power and sewer, that would be an issue. But you're doing it on your own off the grid. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. That's correct. We're completely off the grid. We're not tied to the city utilities in any way. I have solar panels, and we make our own electricity, and we collect our rainwater off of our roof to supply our water needs. And since we're not hooked up to the city sewer, we use composting to dispose of our waste. So we're 100% efficient or self-sufficient.
Outstanding. I mean, first of all, I just have to commend you. I think that's an awesome way to live. I really wish, if I could talk my wife into that, I would be living that right now. But I don't think I could. But regardless, I think it's awesome that you're doing what you're doing, and I think you absolutely have a right to do that. But in addition, I mean, I think this is kind of an arbitrary enforcement of a law here, or an enforcement of an arbitrary law, rather, because when they're talking about you have to be on city power or water, is there a law specifically pertaining to that says you have to be on their facilities or their utilities?
Well, see, that's a confusing thing, because I've asked and no one has been able to yet show me any ordinance that says I'm required to be hooked up to city utilities. What their ordinance says, it says something to the effect of must have a permanent source of power, heat, water, sanitation, facilities, et cetera, et cetera. And all the things that they came and tried to hit us on in their citation. And I filed an appeal to the Community Development Board, arguing all these things, saying, well, I have a source of power, I have a source of water, etc. And they say, well, that isn't good enough because they said it wasn't a permanent source, or they said it wasn't an approved source of power or water. And I said, well, what makes it approved? And they say, well, approved is whatever we say it is, and we say that it's city utilities. So even though there's no law that specifically says you have to be hooked up to city utilities, in the manner that they're enforcing it, you essentially do have to be hooked up to city utilities, or else they deem it to be unsafe living conditions.
Okay, Tyler, I got to ask you, do you have any names of people who are doing this right now? Is that the people who are enforcing these codes, trying to basically do this to you? I want to find their email addresses, and I want to put a call to action out to everybody to let these people know how they feel about what they're doing to you. Do you have any names at all?
Yes, sir, we do. On our website, we have most of the city officials that are in charge of those departments posted on our Facebook page, which is Facebook.com/Tyler for Liberty. And if people want those names and phone numbers, they can get it there. What I have actually been asking people to do is just call the city and let them know how you feel about this. I just feel like we need to hold our city officials accountable for their actions. I mean, is this a government of the people, for the people, and by the people? You know, we need to let them know that that these things won't go unnoticed and that they will be held accountable for the choices that they make.
Absolutely. You know, I personally am disgusted at what's happening to you right now. This is your land. That's your, you bought it. You own it. It's yours. They shouldn't have any say in what you do on it as long as you're not hurting other people or depriving others of their rights. You know, if what you're doing isn't hurting the property value of somebody else, if what you're doing is only affecting you, and they say it's unsafe living conditions, which I find to be the most ridiculous accusation here. Because, first of all, you have a right to live unsafely if you choose to. If you wanted to live in an unsafe living condition, that's entirely up to you. If you're the only one that's being put at risk, I fail to understand this. But yeah, I definitely encourage everybody to go to your Facebook page. What was that again? Facebook.com/what?
It's /Tyler for Liberty is our page, and we keep it updated with all like the latest information on our story and our court case and stuff. And people can also find the link to our YouTube video and stuff. And I'll go a lot more in depth explaining a lot of the legal stuff that we've encountered so far.
Yes, sir. So as far as any of the like anything that people can do to help right now, other than just basically contacting these individuals, do you guys have any kind of donation fund for legal fees or anything like that?
We do have a GoFundMe set up. It's GoFundMe/Tyler Truitt.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I definitely encourage you guys to go check that out. I'm going to go, and at the end of the show, I'm going to go blast it around all my social media and stuff like that. So hopefully other people will get the word about this, and you'll have more attention to this. I'm just really disturbed at everything that they're going through. So what else have they had you go through?
I mean, that's pretty much the gist of it. You know, we're waiting. Right now, we're just kind of waiting. We've already been to trial in the city once, and that was for the zoning ordinance violation. And when they came, they issued us a citation, and the citation just says Mr. Truitt was illegally parking a trailer in a restricted area. So it literally reads just like a parking citation. And of course, I went to court, and I had all my arguments planned out. We had a bunch of evidence of actually other mobile homes that are being used by businesses and different. There's actually a mobile home dealership inside the city. How are they allowed to be here, but yet I'm told I can't live in their product that they're selling here? Like, it doesn't really make sense. But anyway, I had all these arguments and stuff, and when we went to court, the judge wouldn't really even let me present any of my evidence or any of my arguments. They acted like they were in as much of a hurry as they could be just to shut me up, say guilty, and go home for lunch. They didn't want to hear anything that we had to say. So I appealed that decision to the circuit court with a trial de novo, which means they're just basically going to have to give me a complete new trial in the circuit court, and I reserved my right to have a trial by jury. So we're going to make them convict us in a court of our peers. And The second case, I'm still waiting to go to trial in the municipal court, and that's for the unsafe living conditions, or what they're calling unsafe conditions. I don't think that the way we live in any way is unsafe. We actually live pretty comfortably here. You know, we have all the same things that normal households would have as far as electronics and stuff like that. So I feel like we actually live pretty comfortably, and for them to say that it's unsafe, I really feel like they just came and they issued that just as a retaliation, basically, just because of the fact that, I stood up to them and said, well, this is my property. I feel like I deserve to be able to use it to live here if I want to, because the property is zoned as residential, and if you go and read the code for R2B, which is what it's zoned as, it doesn't say anything about trailers or mobile homes. That whole thing that they're trying to cite me on is actually in the miscellaneous section. So you would have to read through all 400 pages of the city zoning ordinance to even find that. But what I've always said is that our use of the property is actually consistent with the zoning as a single-family dwelling. So for them to just come in, as I see it, very arbitrarily and say, well, you can't be here, you're not allowed to use your property in this way, it's just kind of outrageous. I mean, they're taking away a major affordable housing option for people that have property and might not be able to afford to build a brand new home, or just not want to. Like in our case, we didn't want to take on all the debt of buying a brand new house and having a huge mortgage hanging over our heads. I just really wanted to be as economically independent as possible, and to reduce, or to not take on any debt, and to reduce all my bills to a minimum. That way I could be more financially independent.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it makes sense. You took some personal responsibility and tried to stay out of debt. I think that's something that should be rewarded instead of being punished from the government. But I guess they see it differently, and it's really upsetting to me that obviously your situation is them treating you differently than they treat others. The mobile home dealer sitting in the middle of the city, obviously. That's a trailer parked in the city. Even if they owned that property, they would be violating the same situation that they're claiming that you're doing, which obviously...
Right, but
go ahead.
You want to know what the difference is? That's a business, so they're making money for the city, or the way that they see it. If we were somehow, giving the city a lot of money or something, they would probably see it differently. But because of the fact that we're people trying to live independently on our own, I guess they don't see us as really contributing anything to them, so they want to shut us down and not allow us to have this type of lifestyle. Everything really does kind of go back to money, because, like I've always said, I feel like this ordinance and everything that they're trying to do is basically just economic discrimination. They're trying to keep low-income families from being able to own a home inside the city. They would rather you be renting from someone else, which again is contributing to business, or either have to pay to build a new home or to buy a home, again, all contributing to business. They don't want you to have, these affordable and self-sustainable options and stuff, because they want to keep money flowing into their pockets. And because of us, I think that they're afraid that if people follow our example, it's going to screw up their whole system that they've got going. I think the whole country in general kind of feels that way as far as big government and big business is concerned.
Absolutely. It's an interesting point that, it is a form of discrimination, actually trying to keep out certain lower income, people who may use, manufactured homes as a way of affordable living. However, they are trying to make money off of you. That's what this is about. They've basically monetized the law. They're figuring out how to write tickets on arbitrary bullcrap write-ups, things that are absolutely not within the purview of what the government should be regulating. Your property, you should be able to use however you want it. The real true purpose of a government should be to prevent injustice, instead of what they're doing to you right now is perpetrating injustice. They're not supposed to ensure justice rather than just to prevent it. And what they're basically doing to you right now is shaking you upside down and seeing what falls falls out of your pockets. You know, they're hoping that you'll sit down and shut up, and I hope that you keep fighting, man. I hope that you win. Honestly, it may be a long battle. I personally am involved in a legal battle myself, and you know, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let these guys, you know, shut me down. So I hope you continue to do that and keep us updated on everything that's going on, man. And all I can really say is more power to you, buddy.
Well, thank you very much.
So as far as I just want to give one last opportunity here before we take off here, man. Give us your Facebook and any other social media you got, GoFundMe, all that stuff again one last time, just so our listeners know where to go find some more information.
Right, our Facebook is Facebook/ Tyler for Liberty, and we keep that updated. Actually, my girlfriend Soraya keeps most of that stuff updated for us as far as like interfacing with people on there, and you can find out a lot more information. We have links to like all the articles that have been written and like the videos that we've made and stuff, so people can find out a lot more information about the case on there. And also, our GoFundMe is GoFundMe / just Tyler Truitt, my name. So if people want to donate, they can do that there. But again, like I said, the main thing I've been asking people to do is just make your voice heard. Just call the city and let them know how you feel, or even call your own city officials and let them know about it. And maybe things don't get this bad in your own city where you live.
Absolutely.
But you know, we have to hold our officials accountable for the actions and for the laws that they pass. So it's time for us to just stand up as a free people and let our voices be heard again.
Well said. Well said. And again, thanks so much for your time, and also thank you for your service. I really do appreciate that.
Yes, sir. It's an honor. Thank you very much for having me.
All righty. You take care. All right, guys, so at this point, we're going to cut to a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about our featured topics. We got a lot of different stuff on the agenda that we're going to try to get to, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, MacPack. So I highly recommend that you go check out Facebook.com/Tyler for Liberty. Support him, help him get his message out, share that story, contact his representatives that he has provided on the list there. I'm going to try to find that as well and blast it out on our social media, so you can check us, look out for that on our stuff, Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow and at OnTheMoveShow on Twitter. I'll be blasting that out after the show here. And then additionally, you know, this story really bothers me. I mean, it really upsets me that these bureaucrats can try to shake down a citizen who's not hurting anyone. He's not hurting anyone. He's not even hurting himself. You know, he's living a comfortable life, and they're trying to say that he's living in like dangerous conditions that could possibly be harmful to him. Well, even if that was the case, even if it was the case where he was living in a situation where it was dangerous, first of all, it's his property. He's not harming others. He's not depriving anyone else of their rights. But moreover, he has a right to choose to live that way. You know, Democrats are always talking about pro-choice, but they don't ever want anyone to actually be free to choose anything other than, you know, to be able to abort a life. That's the only choice that they want you to have, is to be able to do that. But they don't want you to be able to choose how you use your property, you know, what you can say, what kind of flag you can fly. None of these things matter to them. They only want you to choose one thing and not anything else. This is a problem to me. I have a major issue with that. Is that, you know, this is not free. First of all right, our founders knew that property rights were the utmost importance when it came to individual liberty. Being able to determine your own freedom really entails you being able to do what you want with your own property. So, you know, if you want to, for example, and we'll get to this conversation later, if you want to burn a flag that you went out and bought, that's yours. You own it. You should be able to light your stuff on fire if you want to. You know, there should be no one that should stop you from doing whatever you want with your property. Period. That's a property right side of that conversation. If Tyler wanted to burn down his manufactured home, he should be allowed, as long as it's not putting others at risk. But I digress. So I want to move on to a topic we were talking about earlier here. Actually, move back to this topic. I'll play the clip one more time, real fast. It's the government now, or I'm sorry, 24 Democrats are now trying to push to eliminate the terms husband and wife. Here's the clip.
I now declare you spouse and spouse. 24 Democrats now pushing to eliminate the terms husband and wife from federal law. Lawmakers say the so-called gendered terms should be replaced by more neutral words like spouse or married couple. Well, this comes after the Supreme Court ruled that all states must issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples.
Okay, so, you know, my take on this is that this is going past the point of tolerance and acceptance, which I am for. I think people should be able to do what they want with their property and with their life and their relationships and their bedroom. The government should not be involved in these processes. This has absolutely nothing to do with you, government. Your job is to provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. And again, that does not mean generally everyone is on welfare. It means that everything they do should have an equal benefit to every citizen. So, for example, building a bridge, which, again, I don't necessarily think that we have to have the government even involved in building bridges and roads and whatnot. I think that's something that we could probably even do better, more efficiently, less costly if, you know, it was handed over to a private entity. But that's another story. In regards to this, though, I want to read I now pronounce you spouse and spouse. I want to read an article here from louderwithcrowder.com, and I don't see an author on here. I'm assuming it's from Crowder himself. I'm going to go ahead and read it. Anyway, yes, it is exactly what you just read in the title, and their title was Liberals Now Want to Eliminate the Words Husband and Wife from Federal Law. More than 24 Democrats have come together and proposed a bill to totally remove the words husband and wife from the United States federal law. No word yet on pitcher or catcher. Why? Because they are gendered terms. That's right. The left wants to replace them with more gender-neutral terms like married couples or some other non-offensive term, which is sure to actually become an offensive term a short while later. After all, it will be discriminatory toward the constitutional right of same-sex marriage now. I'm not quite sure. So the argument here seems to be that by not being inclusive in all our terminology, we're hurting gay people. The terms husband and wife aren't hateful. They're just reserved for people who are actually husbands and wives. Why is this a thing? I'll tell you why. For the same reason that cisgender is now being pushed as a politically correct term as opposed to the once accepted word normal. The SJW left wants to see husband and wife done away with because there's no other way to make husband and husband seem as run-of-the-mill. So, look, I understand this is an emotional issue, first of all, but I want to get to here, what the heck is cisgender? I have to look this up. I'm Googling it as we speak. Cisgender. Let me look this up. Okay, we got a Wikipedia site loading here. Often abbreviated to cis, describes related types of gender identity perceptions where individuals' experiences of their own gender agree with the sex they were assigned at birth. So basically, you are acting the way that you are genetically gendered, I guess. I guess that's what it means. I don't know. You know, this is a complicating, confusing issue now. That I think there's like 51, 52 different sexes now. You know, I think this is getting a little bit out of hand here. Come on, look. Genetically, what are you? Are you male or female? It's not that complicated, honestly. It's a pretty simple question, but now we're getting pretty expanded. And again, I'm all for being inclusive. But this isn't about tolerance anymore. This is about them changing the way that we are, the way we perceive them. So, you know, it's and he went on here. This is a part that I want to bring home here. See, even though same-sex marriage is legal, it's still far less common. Statistically, it's not even close. It will always be seen as abnormal or atypical by its very definition, even though the laws have changed. That's not enough. The current social engineering requires leftists to change public perception of reality. Same-sex marriages are rare, so we need new terminology to make it seem not so rare. Does this make sense? All right, so this is very Orwellian. You know, this is like newspeak, how they change definitions of words. We are seeing Orwellian's nightmare come to fruition, and it's not just for. I'm not trying to bash the homosexual community. I think that people should be able to do whatever they want. I don't think the government should be involved. But when you start, and this is coming from the left, people who are constantly screaming down opposition and calling you racist if you disagree, a bigot if you disagree with them, you're trying to have an intellectual conversation with somebody using reason and statistics, and they just scream you down and label you as a racist, a bigot. I am not ashamed to say that, I think that there are people that are homosexual, and in that group, that is a minority of people. And there's nothing wrong with, if you want to do that, that's fine, but don't try to tell me how to live my life or try to change my definitions or my perception of you. If somebody else thinks that it's abnormal for them, for a group of people to be homosexual, that's their right. They're entitled to that. Don't try to change that. Don't try to use this Orwellian newspeak, doublespeak, where they change the definitions of words to try to alter the perception of reality, to try to make you think of things differently than they actually are. Less than 1% of the population are homosexual. Less than 1%. At least according to the 2000 U.S. Census. So we're actually legally changing our laws to basically appease less than 1% of the population's feelings. And it's not giving them more rights. It's taking away something that many people are deeply upset by, them even trying to suggest removing husband and wife from federal law. There's what's the problem with husband and husband? You can say husband and husband. You can say wife and wife. Are you not a wife? Are you not a husband? I don't get why this is a controversy, and it really is blowing me away. Again, there's one thing to be tolerant, and there's another thing to be steamrolled over by people who are a vocal minority, a loud, screaming minority who are just trying to get their way and force you to believe in their form of lifestyle. And it's fine. I don't care if they do what they do. But first of all, I don't think that somebody should be forced to accept it and to change their opinion on it. If, for example, we're talking about churches that are now possibly going to be forced to actually engage in same-sex marriages or be possibly arrested, pastors possibly arrested for not wanting to engage in a same-sex marriage. That's their constitutional right. First of all, their freedom of association. You can choose to associate with somebody or not to associate with somebody if you want. Secondly, it's against their religion. To ask them to participate in a ceremony is one thing. Hey, will you? And if they say no, it's an entirely different thing to say you will or you'll go to jail. That's a whole other thing. If the church wants to participate in same-sex marriage, I don't have any problem with that. Let them do it. But if they don't want to, I don't think they should face any legal recourse. And that's just my opinion. I'm willing to hear from you guys. I want to hear what you guys have to say. Give me a call. The number of the show is 360-450-5625. Again, 360-450-5625. All right, so we're going to move into the Mack Attack segment of the show, and this is where I talk about outrageous events in the news.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
All right, so today I have to talk about the whitewashing of our history. To basically completely erase the Confederate flag and all traces of the Civil War. This to me is egregious. I have a major problem with this because first and foremost, I am a history buff. I love history. I look at it as fables, stories that we can learn lessons from, people who came before us. It's real life. This happened. It's important that we don't forget our history, our heritage, and some of the mistakes that we've made in the past. It's really important, and I know this is an old saying, and it's kind of become kind of cliche. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But it is true. It's true. And right now, this is the most unbelievable story to me. I was shocked when I read this. So they're talking about removing the actually disregard. They're not talking about it. They've done it. They've removed the Confederate flag from Fort Sumter. This is the site where the Civil War began. Let me read here the article on Breitbart.com. This is written by our A.W.R. Hawkins. I don't know if that's initials or a first name. Our Hawkins. Anyway, Confederate flags have been removed from South Carolina's Fort Sumter per a National Park Service directive barring Confederate flags in units of National Park System and unrelated sites, with few exceptions. The Civil War began on April 12th, 1861, when South Carolinians fired on Federals stationed in Fort Sumter. According to the Washington Examiner, National Park Service Director Jonathan Jarvis sent the following directive relating to the Confederate flag. Confederate flags shall not be flown in units of the National Park System and related sites, with the exception of specific circumstances where the flags provide historic context. Okay, I have to just point out that, it's a little bit of a historic context if you're talking about the first battle in the Civil War. We're actually talking about pulling down history. To me, I'm putting this on the same level as ISIS destroying, ancient monuments that have a person's face on it because they think it's sacrilegious. That's history. You'll never get it back. If you destroy it, you never get it back. Especially if it's gone for a generation, people can forget. It's so important that we do not allow these. Again, I feel like this is very Big Brother-esque, because one of the things that was done in 1984, George Orwell's novel, was they actually actively rewrote their history. So we're redefining words. We have people trying to make you change the way that you view your reality or the reality. And in addition to that, they're trying to erase history and change it. You know, the Civil War, it was an ugly time, and it's a stain upon our country. Absolutely. There were no good guys. Everybody was a bad guy. The South wanted slavery to continue. Yes. Obviously, there was some state sovereignty issues at play there as well, which are easily glossed over from everybody who tries to cover the Civil War. You know, the mainstream opinion about it. You know, the North are the good guys trying to stop slavery, and the South just wanted slaves. Yeah, they did. The South wanted slaves. The North, they weren't doing it because of slavery. Let's be real. And it was also state sovereignty at play in this conversation. But to just erase this conversation and act like this never happened and try to rewrite it, how is this any different from Big Brother? How is this any different from 1984, where they would actively go into news articles and change these stories around to fit the new history that they've just created, to fit whatever narrative that they're trying to impress upon the population? How is that any different? I would argue that it's not. Now, I have to talk about this Confederate flag being taken down in South Carolina. You may have heard this already, and if so, I apologize to put you through it because it's torment to listen to this. But South Carolina Republican State Representative Jenny Horn, she's urged the removal of the Confederate flag, and I have to play her urging. Anyway, here's the clip.
I cannot believe that we do not have the heart in this body to do something meaningful, such as take a symbol of hate off these grounds on Friday. And if any of you vote to amend, you are ensuring that this flag will fly beyond Friday. And for the widow of Senator Pinckney.
Okay, first and foremost, let's not discuss anything. Let's not have a conversation about it. It's more important that we act emotionally right now, is what she's saying. Act emotionally. Do what is the knee-jerk reaction right now. Don't have a conversation. Don't think about it. It can't wait. You need to act now. And why? Well, because of a widow.
And his 2 young daughters. That would be adding insult to injury. And I will not be a part of it. I'm sorry. I have heard enough about heritage. I have a heritage. I'm a lifelong South Carolinian. I am a descendant of Jefferson Davis. Okay? But that does not matter. It's not about Jenny Horn. It's about the people of South Carolina who have demanded that this symbol of hate come off of the State House grounds. We need to follow the example of the Senate, remove this flag, and do it today. Because this issue is not getting any better with age. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the things that she alluded to, it wasn't in this clip, unfortunately. She basically blamed the shooting on the Confederate flag as what our leftists are trying to tell us, that this flag is responsible for the South Carolina Charleston shooting, which is obviously incorrect. This flag had no part in the shooting, other than the fact that there is a picture with that flag in the background from the shooter online somewhere. There's a picture of it, but it's not like he said that the Confederate flag is the reason why he shot people. It's not like he went out and actually strangled people or suffocated people with the flag. The flag had nothing to do with it. This is unrelated. This is a knee-jerk reaction. Let's find something to blame. Let's find something to blame. Let's start banning. Let's ban. Let's let the government do whatever they want. And, okay, so, first of all, I have no problem. If the citizens of South Carolina wish to fly the flag or they wish to not fly the flag over their public grounds, I have no problem with that. If they don't want to do that on, like, for example, the Capitol building, That's up to them. If I have no personal love for the Confederate flag, I honestly don't care about it. I'm from the North. I've never really been particularly fond of that flag. I think for me, I see things that I don't like in that flag. I see the negative aspects of it, but other people don't. And again, that's the thing about a symbol. A symbol is different for different people. You know, to some people, a symbol could mean one thing, and to other people, it could mean something totally different. So personally, I have no love for the Confederate flag in general, but I certainly understand the ideas that people could have behind it being like a rebel flag and, you know, sticking it to the man, those kind of things. I get, I understand. So, and even the heritage side of it, she said, you know, she's sick and tired of hearing about heritage. Well, look, no one's forcing you to listen. No one's forcing you to do anything. And let's be clear, let's be real. No one using any kind of reason or logic could ever argue that removing this flag down sooner would have ever stopped the loss of life in Charleston. No one. Yeah, I mean, you just cannot logically follow that. So, what's one more day? What's one more day, one more weekend, even one more month of having a flag out there? Let's have a conversation. I have such a huge problem with people shouting down opposition and trying to use emotional reasons behind it as to why we can't talk about these things and why we need to just act. I have a problem with that. So, anyway, we're going to actually cut to a quick commercial break. I see we got about 10 minutes left in the original program. We're going to do a small overdrive, so don't go anywhere, guys. We'll be right back after this break.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore. With the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. But now your host, Mack Worley III.
So when we last left, we were talking about this Confederate flag controversy. Personally, as I've said, I don't really care what people do with this flag. If they want to fly it on their own private property, I think that's fine. If companies want to sell it or not sell it, I think that's fine. They should be allowed to do whatever they want to do on that. In regards to flying in a public area such as a Capitol building, I think that should be left up to the states, the voters of that state, and that's fine. However, there are certain things that I have a major problem with, and that's when you start whitewashing history and you start basically saying that, we're basically just going to cover up the past. We're going to act like the Civil War never happened. Yeah, it was a bad time. I get it. It's something that we should be embarrassed about. Yeah, but we don't need to hide this embarrassment. We need to learn from this embarrassment. So another story here of them trying to do just that. Memphis City Council unanimously votes to dig up Confederate general and his wife. This is an article on theexaminer.com, and this is published on July 9th. Here's a clip. I'm going to play it. Here we go.
Well, Claudia, first, let's take a look at this statue that everyone seems to be talking about lately. You can just see how massive, how big it is here. If you've been driven down Union Avenue, you've surely seen it, or if you spent any time in the Health Sciences Park. Now, below this statue is also a gravesite. Forrest and his wife are buried here. Now, removing it might seem like a huge task, but Mayor A.C.
It's Nathan Bedford Forrest.
Wharton says it's time to start figuring out how they can do it.
Which African American will say, I'd like to have a picnic in the shadow of Nathan Bedford Forrest?
Mayor A.C. Wharton says it's time for the general to come down, or at least moved. A few years ago, 3 Confederate parks in Memphis had their names changed. Now, Wharton says Memphis needs to follow Nashville, and calls from Governor Bill Haslam, where they want to remove the bust of Forrest from the state capitol.
If we're going to go through this across the state, let's just do it all at one time. Let's not come back and dribble this out.
Wharton thinks the statue should move to Elmwood Cemetery.
Yeah, let's just whitewash everything in the state. And you know what? Let's rename the state. How about this? Let's just get rid of that old document, the Constitution, because that's a weird part of our history, right? Because some of those guys, they owned slaves. So, and the Declaration of Independence, written by Thomas Jefferson, he was a slave owner. So yeah, let's throw those away too, because that's embarrassing.
And said that's what Forrest wanted.
It ought to be right there in Elmwood, where he had requested in his will that his remains lie along with his fellow Confederates.
But Lee Miller with the Sons of the Confederate Veterans said there are laws in place like the Historic Preservation Act, which ensures the statue can't be moved.
All military statues, monuments, memorials, cemeteries, battlefields are protected under state law because it's part of Tennessee's and America's history.
Miller said Forrest was a huge part of Memphis history. The general was a city councilman and helped rebuild the city after the war. He thinks the Wharton administration should focus their attention on other things.
It's just a waste of time.
People we talked to said this is an important conversation as the nation is making many changes.
Changes to improve and become more racially diverse and accepting of other cultures and races, and I think that's important to not only Tennessee but also the South and America as a whole.
Okay, so yeah, this to me is an issue because they're trying to just erase things like it never happened. It's just because you tear down a statue doesn't mean that the history didn't take place. All it means is that less people will be able to learn from it. And thank goodness there are laws that prevent people from coming in and just ripping things down that they're offended. We live in such a litigious society, by the way, and a society where things are so blown out of proportion so quickly. Everything offends everybody, and oh my God, oh no, like this is one of those things that happens. And honestly, the funny thing is if you just ignored this for a week, it would have gone away. And that's why I haven't covered it until right now, because I didn't really want to talk about this. I was hoping this story would go away because I feel like it's a distraction. We got so much going on. We got the Iran nuclear deal. We got the TPP being forced down our throats. There's so many other things to talk about. But this is first and foremost in our media. And if we didn't talk about it, it would have just gone away. But unlike some things, if you don't talk about some things, they don't just go away. They become basically, the norm. Like, for example, this is a weird situation that's happening now in our college campuses. This is a kind of a diversion. I know I'm going in the weeds a little bit, but I need to point this out. Are you guys aware that they're now talking about having to sign a contract before you have any kind of sexual relations with somebody to make sure that you consent? Because if you both are drinking alcohol, you are not able to consent. First of all, and if you're both drinking alcohol, obviously the guy is going to be the one to blame. So in college campuses now, they're having these contracts where you now have to basically do this. This needs to be spoke about, because if we ignore that, that won't go away. That'll become the norm, because that's the way that, first of all, the way universities work, it's kind of a training ground for liberalism. And I'm experiencing right now, I go to school, and I'm in college, and I see it firsthand, the kind of liberal, I guess it just kind of seeps into you as you're there. I could see them trying to do that to me. Like, for example, I took a class on environmental policies, and they kept in the book, they kept trying to say that there's a correlation between carbon dioxide and global warming, and there is no actual evidence. They can't say if you produce a certain amount of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that it will raise the temperature of the Earth by this many degrees. They can't. They cannot do that. So until they can actually give you a correlation, that's not true. But they're putting it in the books, and they're telling you it's true. Anyway, the reason why I'm saying that is because they're teaching these things to kids. All right, these children are going into school. Our kids are going into school, and they're learning these things from the left. And if nobody challenges it in the schools, this contract for sexual relations, again, how Big Brother is that, by the way? Take out all the romance out of that, and now it's just you have to actually get a legal document involved in your bedroom. Unbelievable. That is getting the government involved, litigiousness involved into our affairs. That is not necessary. But this normal, when these kids get out of college, they go out into the world. So what is normal in college eventually filters out into the rest of our society. This is a thing. This is what we have to be. There's some of the sensational stories you can ignore, and they'll go away. Like, I think the Confederate flag nobody would have covered it. If the media wasn't interested, it would have just gone away, and it wouldn't have been a big deal. None of these legislators would have been talking about removing the flags, changing our historical monuments, tearing down statues. None of that stuff would have mattered. And let's also point out the fact, what could they be doing with their time that is more valuable? We're paying these people to work for us. In many cases, they work against us, as in the case of Tyler Truitt. We just talked about this. But what could they be doing differently? We're paying them to sit around and talk about destroying our history and our heritage? That's what we're doing? No. It's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. So I got another story related to this. If that wasn't enough, General Lee from the Dukes of Hazzard is losing the Confederate flag. What in the world is going on? Look, this is a part of history too, okay? And how in the world is it making anyone safer to paint over the Confederate flag on the General Lee? Which, by the way, the show has been taken, Dukes of Hazzard has been taken off of the air. It's no longer playing on TV Land, which I think is one of the only places where you could have found it now, other than like Netflix or something like that. But PGA golfer Bubba Watson, he won this the General Lee for $110,000 at auction. So it's his car, it's his private property. He's allowed to do whatever he wants with it. I just think it's reactionary. He's going to paint an American flag over it. And this is followed by the move by Walmart, Amazon, eBay, and others to take steps to basically remove the flag from any kind of merchandise that they sell. These companies no longer sell this kind of merchandise with the flag on it. So we're just whitewashing things away like this never happened. This is important to know. To forget about the Civil War is to forget about the suffering of those individuals that were left in bondage. I mean, that I think is something that we can't forget. That would be a disservice to those people who had to suffer through the institution of slavery, to forget them, to forget their struggle. It would be like us trying to whitewash Martin Luther King Jr. from history. That suddenly it would be a big deal, I'm sure, to many. However, that's a more recent history that many people can relate to, because it's honestly, some people have lived through that still, so a lot of people are still living during that time period. So that would be the equivalent of getting rid of anything about the struggle of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That would be what it would be equivalent to. And personally, I don't want that. I think that would be a disservice to the people who had to struggle and fight for their individual rights as well. So, yeah, we need to remember this stuff. We need to learn from our history. We need to, yeah, it's embarrassing, but we need to air our dirty laundry out and not try to hide it and own up to the fact that we've made mistakes, you know? Our ancestors have made mistakes, but we need to make sure that we leave that history there so our descendants don't repeat the same mistakes that they've made. I think it would be incredibly unfortunate for us to go through and just make our history better. I'm using air quotes here. You know, try to actually improve it. And again, you know, another story here that I found particularly upsetting, and I posted this on our group, and you know this one, I really think it just shows the stripes of the leftists here. I think they're showing their progressive stripes and showing, you know, how they really feel. So this is deathandtaxesmag.com, and it's an article titled "Hero Rushes Through Traffic to Rip Confederate Flag Off of Truck." So this is unbelievable to me. This guy, it's broad daylight, and he runs up to the back of a 18-wheeler, you know, a truck and trailer, and he's trying to remove the Confederate flag. Again, this is private property. It's not like it's publicly owned or anything. And it certainly doesn't belong to the person removing the flag. He rushes through traffic. This is a busy highway. I'm looking at it right now. There are cars in every single lane. You cannot see the majority of the road. That's how many cars are on the road right now. So he runs through traffic, broad daylight, steals property off of the back of a semi-truck, and they're calling him a hero? Unbelievable. I think this title should read, you know, criminal, you know, creates traffic hazard and steals private property in broad daylight. That's what this should read. But no, the leftists, they want you to be charged on these emotional issues. Don't have the conversation. Don't think. Just submit. This flag's racist. Don't talk about it. Don't have a conversation. I have a fundamental problem with this. You know, and in particular, I have a problem with the idea of us in a society making decisions on an emotional basis. You know, that's one reason, as I talked about earlier in the show, the government runs slowly. That's one reason why it runs slowly. Our founders knew that it was important for us to slow down the cogs of the government, slow down this giant turning wheels of the federal Leviathan. Make it run slow. That way, if it's trying to be used in an oppressive way, number one, it will take a while, and it will have a difficult time keeping up with society. So that's important. But in addition, you know, this country was not established as a democracy. It's a republic, or at least that's the way it was set up. And there's a difference between democracy and a republic. And let me just, to illustrate the point that our founders did not want us to have a straight-up pure democracy, I'll just give you two quotes here from two people that you may know, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin. Thomas Jefferson once said, "A democracy is nothing more than mob rule, where 51% of the people may take away the rights of the other 49. That makes sense. It's a term that's been coined. Called the tyranny of the majority. That's a big problem, you know, with democracy. And you know, I'll get back to that in a second here. Another quote here by Benjamin Franklin: "Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote." And here's another person who spoke about democracy that you may be familiar with, Karl Marx, the inventor of Marxism and the guy who literally wrote the book on communism. He said, democracy is the road to socialism, which I'm not a big fan of redistributing wealth from one group to another using the coercive force of government, you know, stealing. It's legalized plunder where you take from one group of people to give to another. the government does that, it's all hunky-dory. But if an individual did that, that would be illegal. There is no difference. There is no difference. Regardless, our founders didn't want us to have a pure democracy, which is why they created checks and balances to slow us down. But, we have people like President Obama who have a pure disdain for checks and balances, talking about how if he could go around, if I could bypass Congress, I'd do it. I'd bypass him. He's trying to do these kind of things, and this is becoming a narrative that's just pushed out in the mainstream media that it's okay. It's okay to have a disdain for checks and balances. No, it's not. It is not okay. Anyway, so I want to move to the next topic here. This will be our final topic of the day, I believe, and that is flag burning. We've talked about this a lot, and I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I do want to get into this topic here, and I think it's important that we cover it because I think it's a free speech issue, and I definitely think it's a property rights issue. So anyway, we're going to cut to our last commercial break of the day. When we come back, we're going to cover a story here where veterans were involved in stopping protesters from burning flags. So I want to basically just highlight this and get your guys' take. I'll give you my take on it. So anyway, we'll be right back after this commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LADOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. We're going to get into the last topic here, but I figured it was important. I haven't talked about this yet, so I want to talk about Hillary Clinton for just 1 second here and talk about two kind of important issues. Number one, she did an interview where she said that she was never subpoenaed by anyone regarding the Benghazi situation. She said that there was no subpoenas from the House Benghazi Committee for her. However, information has come out that she was lying because she's a liar. And she just lies. So she's talking about how she can be trusted in the interview and how you should just trust me. And, I think I'm a trustworthy person. I think that the voters can sort this stuff out. And I happen to agree. I think that the voters can sort this stuff out. You guys aren't stupid. You guys aren't willing to fall for this liar who's just lying. I mean, it's... I think it's hilarious because, again, this is one of those things where I think Hillary believes that she can just say whatever she wants and people will forget, and we have it on film. And the one thing that is an issue with this is that this relies on the media, the mainstream media, for example, to actually promote and talk about the fact that she lied, but it's not going to happen. It's going to be alternative media or conservative media that's talking about this, and basically we're essentially preaching to the choir because we all know where Hillary Clinton stands. You know, she's a progressive. You know, she's even more liberal than Obama is. She's a gun-grabbing extremist. She's also a liar. She said, "What difference does it make?" You know, referring to the Benghazi situation where, you know, we're trying to get to the bottom of what actually happened in Benghazi, and she doesn't really care. She doesn't care that Americans died. So, anyway, she lied. She did have subpoenas. And in addition to this, another interesting story, I thought I'd just get to it here, you know, is this is a very friendly press to Hillary Clinton. You know, the mainstream media, they love her. They love Hillary Clinton, even though, you know, she's literally been bribed by the Saudis, you know, the Saudi Arabia, you know, with the Clinton Foundation. She's basically embezzling this money, you know, using the Clinton Foundation to do that. And, you know, she while she was working for the State Department, she was receiving money from a foreign government. Yeah, right. That's not shady at all. And it's in the Clinton Foundation, which is supposed to be I can't say the words. Philanthropist? There we go. It's supposed to be basically like the Red Cross, essentially. But they use it to pay employees. People who are on the payroll out of that thing. And in addition, to cover their travel expenses and whatnot. But you know, the press doesn't cover this kind of thing. They just ignore it and they cover it up. Very friendly press for Hillary Clinton. But I find it a little bit interesting that Hillary still felt the need to rope them in, essentially. Hillary did she was out at a 4th of July parade, I believe, and she actually roped off a little area and pinned in reporters during the parade. You know, these are the people that are covering her butt. And there's an article, there was an email that was released from one of Clinton's aides or something along those lines. I can't remember what it was now, but I remember them saying, this aide was sending a message to Clinton saying, "Hey, I got a reporter here that wants to do a story on you. He's promised that you can have full editing rights of it, and you can decide the content of what's in it. He promises you'll like it." This is outrageous to me. I mean, what other politician, first of all, disregard, what conservative or libertarian politician would have that kind of right to edit the content of a story? This media is complicit with this, and it's very unlikely that they're going to continue to talk, or they're going to actually do something about calling Hillary out for lying. I mean, the entire idea of Hillary having her own email server to make it simpler, that doesn't even make any sense. First of all, we know she lied about having multiple devices. She said she did it to streamline her life, basically, to have less devices. But that's a lie. She said she only wanted one device. She has several. She's already on film admitting that she had several. And this is while she has this private email server. So we're supposed to trust that she gave over all of the information relating to the Benghazi scandal in this email dump that she did. She said she wasn't breaking the law. It's kind of a gray area on that, but that's where the Clintons work best at, is these legal gray areas. So regardless, we're supposed to trust that she gave us everything, even though she went through and was able to pick out things that she didn't want to just give over. And then she had her lawyer do the same thing. So why can't we look into there? Why can't we have, like, for example, one of the prosecutors looking into this or something? This to me just seems like a scandal like crazy, but the government, the mainstream media just covers it up and they stay complicit with Hillary Clinton. And then she, in turn, ropes them into a little area during the 4th of July parade, which I find a little odd and interesting, that paradox there, because we're celebrating American independence and American liberty by lassoing the press into a little pinned up area. Hooray, America! Hooray! So I don't know how much long the press will be complicit with her, but it just seems like this is a thing. They have to suck it up and take it, because this is the progressive future. This is, Hillary is owed the presidency as far as she's concerned, absolutely. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. We'll see if we end up seeing Hillary in the White House. Jeez, I don't think this country can handle it. But anyway, I want to go ahead and play this clip here for you guys from an incident where there were people that were burning the flag, and veterans came out to forcibly stop the New York flag burning event. So anyway, I'll go ahead and play the clip here.
Don't ever forget.
Were you prepared to burn a flag?
Yes, I am.
Why don't you burn my flag? Burn my flag.
Go ahead.
Burn flag. They died. They died for this flag, and we're going to go here and burn it? No, we vote if we don't like it.
We're going to defend this flag because America is the best country on the planet. Don't ever forget that.
Okay. I appreciate the enthusiasm, and I personally have a lot of respect for the flag. The only situation I could ever imagine me personally ever burning a flag would be in a ceremonious way. From what I recall from my time in the military, if I'm remembering my PDG guide, where they discussed, if a flag touches the ground or if it's been beaten up from weather, basically. That you're supposed to ceremoniously burn it, from what I understand. Maybe I'm misremembering, but I think that's what it is. But that would be the only circumstance that I personally would do that in. However, it's absolutely, first of all, someone's right on multiple levels here. So let's just cover this again, even though we've already had it. So I made the post and I said, let these misguided fools burn their pieces of colored cloth. The flag is not more important than the freedoms that it represents. It's a shame that the so-called patriot community has gotten swept up in this nationalistic style of rhetoric. Does anyone actually fight for the flag? I always thought that you fought for your friends, your family, and your way of life, and the men and women standing beside you, in terms of being in the military. So, I don't know. I mean, some people may say, yeah, I fought for the flag, and if that's the case, good on you. You can do that. However, I think that symbols, as we talked about, can be different for different people, and the meaning of symbols can change. So, I mean, for example, just look at the Nazi flag, okay? The swastika. It flipped the other way, I believe. In other cultures, it meant like peace, I think. But now it means something totally different. Symbols can be hijacked as well. That's a very important thing to note. For me, I don't put much emphasis in symbols because of the fact that symbols can be hijacked, and we have a nefarious left wing that tries to do things like that. I don't want to be blinded to the liberties that this symbol is supposed to represent because I'm so focused on the symbol itself. It's a piece of colored cloth. It is not anything more than a piece of colored cloth and a symbol. So, again, the symbol can mean something to different people, and that's great. And you have a right to respect it or not respect it. You can do what you want. That's the beauty of America. And what it's supposed to represent is these freedoms. These freedoms. Personally, I didn't serve my country for the flag. There were a lot of reasons, but not one of them was for the flag. The flag is an item. That's just where I stand, but I digress. I want to actually comment on this here a little bit in terms of the actual issues. Okay, so first and foremost, let's talk about the free speech issue of this. Okay, this is constitutionally protected. The act of burning a flag is constitutionally protected as a form of political speech. So, where this actually occurred, I mean, it's happened before, obviously, but and again, I don't put too much stock in this talking about the Supreme Court judgment, the case it actually came from, because again, it's 9 people in robes, but I'm just using it to illustrate the historical importance of this. Okay. So Gregory Lee Johnson, the case is Texas versus Johnson. Gregory Lee Johnson burned an American flag outside of the convention center where the 1984 Republican National Convention was being held in Dallas, Texas. Johnson burned the flag to protest the policies of President Ronald Reagan. He was arrested and charged with violating a Texas statute that prevented the desecration of a venerated object, including the American flag, if such actions were likely to incite the angers of others. A Texas court tried to convict Johnson. He appealed, arguing that his actions were symbolic speech protected by the First Amendment. The Supreme Court agreed to hear his case, and they ruled, yes, it is constitutionally protected speech. In a 7-3 judgment, the majority of the court, according to Justice William Brennan, agreed with Johnson and held that the flag burning constitutes a form of symbolic speech that is protected by the First Amendment. The majority noted that freedom of speech protects actions that society may find very offensive. But society's outrage alone is not justification for suppressing free speech. In particular, the majority noted that the Texas law discriminated upon viewpoint, i.e., although the law punishes actions such as burning the flag that might arouse anger in others, it specifically exempted from prosecuting actions that were respectful of venerated objects, e.g., burning or burying a worn-out flag. Okay, I was right. There we go. The majority said that the government could not discriminate in this manner based solely upon the viewpoint. So that's actually a great point, is to respect it, to burn it, is totally legal, but to disrespect it by burning it is illegal. And obviously the act of disrespecting it is symbolic speech. You are saying something with your actions. It means something. You're not just burning it for no reason unless you just want to see something burn. And in my opinion, that is, that's probably something that you may want to look into. You may have some arsonistic tendencies in terms of that, but more importantly, you should be able to burn your property if you want to. It's yours. You own it. You bought it. You paid for it. As long as you didn't steal it from somebody else, you should be able to do whatever you want, which, oddly enough, this is a conversation that's coming up in this conversation because people were saying, oh, well, there's a story about this man who burned this rainbow flag, and he was arrested as a hate crime. Look, it's important to note that he stole the flag off of a homosexual couple, I think, their porch, or maybe somebody who just supported the same-sex ruling. He stole the flag off of their porch and then burned it. That's called theft. That's a theft crime, all right? and possibly it could be argued that it's a hate crime as well. I'm not going to get into that, but the point is that you should be able to burn your property if you want. You should be able to destroy it, use it however you want, your land however you want. The Tyler Truitt situation, that's how, that's what this country was founded on, is property rights. It's important that we remember this. And free speech into this as well. We would not need a First Amendment if everybody's speech was stuff that we didn't find offensive. If the entire reason why we have a First Amendment, to protect our freedom of speech. Again, the First Amendment doesn't give this to us. It just protects it in the Constitution, prevents the government from trying to silence our voices. The reason why is because there's speech that many people find offensive, and our founders wanted to make sure that those speeches, that those words got out. So I would also be remiss here if I did not discuss another situation that happened. This was in our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/OnTheMoveShow. I deleted some posts that had racial slurs in them on our group. Now, some people in the group disagreed with my actions there. I made sure it was transparent, and I made a post. I told everybody what happened. My issue here is not trying to silence political speech or ideas. You're entitled to say what you want. However, first of all, if you have to use racial slurs in your argument, it's probably not a very good argument, number one. All right? Number two, by using your free speech, which I support your right to use free speech, I also likewise am entitled to assert my right of association, my freedom to choose who I associate with. And I personally don't want to be associated with racists. So just an FYI, if you are racist, I don't want to be associated with you. So if just to clear that up, I personally do not want to be associated with racists. In addition, I think that it weakens the group as a whole. If you allow somebody, we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. If you allow somebody to infiltrate your group that is using racial slurs and making your group look bad. We're ambassadors for liberty. I've talked about this before. We are ambassadors for liberty. No different than when I was in the military and we were always talking about how we were ambassadors for the base, being security forces, because that was the first imprint that people got when they came to the base. They saw you in your uniform, checking IDs, coming on the base. That was their first impression. So you are an ambassador for liberty. If you're out there talking about individual rights and then you're with somebody who's out there talking about, calling people racial slurs, people are going to be put off by that. First of all, we want to be mainstream enough, number one, to where people will want to actually listen to you. All right, at least to that point. Now, I'm not saying silence your speech, but in terms of the Facebook group, let me just two points here. All right, the reasons why I deleted the Facebook post was not because I disagree with the speech and therefore I was going to censor it. Number one, that group has my name on it. So, I personally, it's On the Move with Mack Worley. It's not necessarily my group, it's our group, but I don't want my name associated with racial slurs. That's just how I feel. And that's my freedom of association to disassociate with that. Secondly, the group itself is on Facebook, and Facebook has a terms of service, and in there, hate speech is actually a violation of that terms of service. So for me, I don't want to risk this group that we've built up, that we use to organize, discuss events, discuss different things, we debate, all these different things. I don't want to risk losing this community because of the actions of some racist individual who can't participate in a conversation without using racial slurs. That's the way I feel. So because of that, I deleted the posts, and I made a post about it, letting others know about that. Anyway, we lost people in the group because of that. Some people thought that I failed a challenge. I failed to step up to uphold liberties that I believe in. I will disagree with that, and I think they're entitled to believe what they want, and I wish them the best of luck. However, I'm not going to stand on the side of racists and bigots. I want to disassociate myself with that, and that's a right that I have. So, anyway, we're going to go ahead and wrap up today's show. I sure do appreciate you guys tuning in. And anyway, I just got a lot of props I want to shout out to Allison Bricker for joining us on the show here. I'm really, really happy that she joined us. I thought that was an awesome interview. In addition, I want to thank Tyler Truitt for joining us on the program as well. Please go check out his Facebook. At the end of the show, I'm going to be posting on our social media all the stuff that you can do to get involved to help his situation out and help fight against his local government that's trying to, ban him from living in his home. That's his home on his land, his property. So, please do what you can to get involved. At minimum, send an email. Call somebody. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to work, throughout Monday and everything to try to get some people to do that as well. So please try to organize your own situation to get people to help his fight, his legal battle. So anyway, I just want to give a big shout out to you guys. Thanks so much, MacPack, our listeners. I just want to thank you so much for tuning in week after week. You guys are the tip of the spear, and I really do appreciate your continued support. Don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can also check us out on haywiregulch.com. We simulcast there, as well as the405media.com. Don't forget to check us out on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. And again, make sure you're staying tuned to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/OnTheMoveShow, because we're releasing new information, about my appeal, and we're going to be releasing more trial videos from our last trial last year, and you guys don't want to miss that. Anyway, also, if you guys could follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow, I'd be greatly appreciative of that. You can like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow and follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.